In a world where power decides everything, one ordinary life shatters into destiny. Betrayal, blood, and broken dreams carve the path of a hero who never asked to be one. But when fate opens its cruel hands, will he rise or be swallowed by the darkness? This is not just a story. This is a journey of survival, of strength, and of becoming something greater than human. Prepare yourself, because once you step into this world, there is no turning back. Welcome to the story that will change everything. Dragon's Awakening. The Duke's Son is changing the plot. Chapter 7, The Practical Test 1. The morning sun unfurled slowly over the ancient stone paths of the cradle, spilling warmth across the ground in tender shades of gold. The light draped itself across the shoulders of the young heirs as they walked, shadows stretching long and sharp behind them, as though reminding them of the weight they carried. Today was not an ordinary day. Today was the practical class, the second test, the most important one, and the one that mattered more than any written examination. This was the stage where the strong were separated from the weak, where every group within the cradle would be tested and ranked. And here in this place where pride meant survival and survival meant recognition, a rank was everything. Groups had long been formed, not by skill alone, but by the twisted hierarchy of influence that ruled the noble lines. It was supposed to be simple, the strongest choosing first, the weaker filling the ranks left behind. But the truth was far crueler. Favoritism, family names, and the power of backing overshadowed raw ability. Those with connections sat atop the ladder, those without were cast aside. And so Raven Vase, the boy from the main branch yet deliberately overlooked, found himself at the very end of that long chain. By the time it was his turn, the talented had long been snatched away, and what remained were the three most unwanted of the lot. Alex, Clara, Jake. Together they were whispered about as useless, fools, the weak links of the academy. And yet, Raven did not protest. He did not maneuver his way out of it, even though he could have. He accepted them without a word, because he knew. They were not just three outcasts. They were the ones fate had tied to him, the hidden treasures concealed behind the mask of idiocy. The story had gifted him allies, loyal, unwavering, and destined to grow into monsters of strength. They were, in their rawest form, the subordinates every great player would dream to have. For now they might appear foolish, unbearable, and far from the formidable selves they were meant to become. But Raven was no fool. He would not discard the gift that had fallen into his lap, even if he had to endure their antics until they bloomed into the figures he knew they would be. Yet on this morning, there was something different. The three walked alongside him in an unusual silence, one that pressed against the air uncomfortably. Jake, who usually carried himself with brooding detachment, seemed restless, clearing his throat, starting to speak only to stop again. Clara, the queen of sarcasm, whose tongue never spared Alex, had been suspiciously gentle, not a single insult leaving her lips for minutes longer than Raven had ever witnessed. And Alex, loud, reckless Alex, was the strangest of them all, arms crossed, lips pressed together in thought, a rarity in itself. Their carefulness was suffocating. Their concern hung in the air like perfume too thick to breathe. Raven understood immediately. He understood before Alex, in his clumsy way, cracked the silence with words that made even Jake flinch, and Clara smack her forehead. The fool tried to mask sympathy with careless theory, dismissing the role of mothers, suggesting that life without one was no tragedy at all. It was a pathetic attempt, poorly hidden, a shield of nonsense words. Raven knew. He knew what they were trying to do. They thought him fragile, a boy stumbling beneath the shadow of a dead mother. They thought that yesterday's memories would fester, that grief would cut deeper than he could bear. But grief was not something Raven clung to. Not anymore. He could only shake his head, half amused, half tired. He told them in his own way that he was not weak, that he would not shatter simply because his life did not carry the warmth of a mother's embrace. He reminded them, with sharpness in his voice, that their pity was misplaced. If they wanted to coddle someone, it would not be him. The tension loosened. Clara muttered. Jake sighed. Alex breathed in relief, and the group continued toward the training grounds, falling into their usual rhythm of pointless bickering, a rhythm Raven had grown used to enduring. But the comfort of familiarity did not last. As soon as they stepped onto the grounds, the world shifted. The air grew heavy, heads turned, eyes followed. Whispers, low at first, then louder, clawed at the edges of their presence. The cruelty of the cradle revealed itself. The voices came sharp and mocking like knives pressed to skin. Bastards, strays, unwanted. Stray dogs clinging to one another because no one else would take them. The words struck Clara, made Alex clench his fists, made Jake's jaw tighten though he tried to keep his face still. The whispers built into laughter, echoing across the ground. And then came the cruelest cut. A voice rang out, dripping venom, dragging Raven's mother into their ridicule. Dead, they said. As good as a bastard, they mocked. The laughter that followed was not the laughter of joy, but the laughter meant to dig, to slice open wounds, to salt them. Raven had expected anger from his companions, but even he was startled by the swiftness of their response. Alex spun, ready to fight. Clara's sleeves rolled, her body surging with fire. Even Jake, the composed one, stepped forward with thunder in his eyes. But Raven stopped them. His hand landed on Alex's shoulder, firm yet calm. One look was enough. Clara halted. Jake froze. Alex trembled with rage but obeyed, and when they turned to see his face, they understood why. Raven was not angry. He was not broken. His lips curved into a smile, but it was not warm, not kind. It was a smile carved from ice, sharp and dangerous, a smile that belonged to someone who had already seen the board laid out and had already chosen his move. It was the smile of a predator waiting for the perfect moment. His voice was smooth, almost lazy, when he reminded them of his earlier command. No fights before the match. No wasted energy. No distractions. His tone left no room for argument. The others stepped back, frustrated but unwilling to defy. Around them, the students sneered, thinking they had won, thinking Raven had bowed his head and swallowed the insult, thinking the silence was weakness. But they were wrong. The test had already begun. It had begun the moment Raven set foot on the grounds. Every whisper, every insult, every cruel laugh was part of the challenge. To waste fury on words was to fall into the trap set before them. To lash out would gain them nothing. Raven knew this truth well, and so he let it slide. For now. He had lived long enough, seen enough to understand that very little could anger him anymore. There were not many things in this life he held close enough to wound him. His mother's name fell into that fragile category, but even so, he would not grant his enemies the satisfaction of seeing his pain, because today was not a day for tears. Today was a day for payback. And he would not need words for that. The training ground awaited. The practical test loomed ahead, and Raven, with his three so-called idiots at his side, walked forward with that cold smile still carved into his lips. For in this place where cruelty was currency, he would answer not with anger, not with despair, but with victory. And today would be perfect.